Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, with the patch notes for 1.4.3, the mid-season patch for Season 4 dropping yesterday, there was one major thing that was very notably absent, which is any changes at all in regards to the tempering system. There's a lot to do with this that could use some changing around, so today we'll talk about why exactly the system is causing so many issues, especially at this stage of the season, compared to, at the beginning of it. Some ways that I could see it potentially changing or fixing it, perhaps, and talk about what the changes realistically are of any changes at all coming to the system in the near future, now that it has, been ignored for the major patch of the season. First things first, it is worth noting that not literally everyone dislikes tempering as it stands. There is in fact a relatively small but very vocal group who likes the fact that you can brick items, who feels like it makes you have to earn them more rather than just having them drop from the sky as they are. But my counter to anyone who thinks that way is that you aren't really earning anything. Realistically, at the end of the day, tempering is just another RNG system for item power. You can control how greedy you are with it and how much you push it, but aside from that, it's still just as much RNG based as having an item drop with good affixes to begin with. So claiming that tempering being able to brick items makes them feel more earned when they do turn out well is honestly just sort of backwards to me. In my opinion, greater affixes are this concept being done well, because it is just as RNG based as getting the correct tempering rolls, and the reason this works better is if there isn't a greater affix on a piece of gear, it's just whatever. But if there is at least one, there's that moment of excitement when you see that, right? But then that is followed by tempering that same item, which again is a mostly RNG based experience. But the difference is, if the RNG goes poorly on tempering, rather than just being, oh well, that's the normal item then, it's, oh, I've completely ruined this and now it isn't at all worth using in my build anymore despite me being excited about it previously. To summarize what I mean though, both tempering and greater affixes are RNG systems that result in significant player power if you get lucky. But one of them feels great when it goes well, and it's not really that bad when it doesn't, whereas the other system feels terrible when it doesn't work out, and just sort of good when it does work. You want more ways for players to feel good about items, not any ways that make them feel bad after they put input into it, to put it simply. That said, why talk about this again right now? Why is it more important now than it has been any point up until this point? Well, three reasons really. The first is that the mid-season patch addressed absolutely nothing in the slightest when it comes to tempering. The second is that this upcoming Friday, we have a dev stream talking about the PTR for Season 5. And if they don't announce there being tempering changes within this, that means it is the perfect time to bring it up and try to get their attention about it so that this does get some sort of changes before Season 5. The third reason then is quite simply that we are further in the season. As people play more, they refine their builds more, their gear improves and upgrades, and you wind up with some absurdly good items just from pure luck eventually, from playing the game enough. Sometimes even something like a triple greater affix legendary with great affixes actually rolled on it as well. Back at the start of the season, the concept of bricking an item through tempering was just sort of an annoyance, a mild inconvenience. Nothing that couldn't really be replaced with a couple of dungeon runs or something like that, just looking for some new loot, maybe even just a couple of Blood Maiden kills. The second that you start upgrading to items that have 2 greater affixes or more, the fear of bricking these items through tempering becomes much more real and far more concerning. You find yourself spending far more time playing it safe and just sort of stopping once you get the correct affix tempered on, rather than hunting for high rolls as well, because that is simply the safest way to actually temper if you don't want to break items. And the result is simply that there's just a lot of pressure and stress in this system, and for the most part, I think it's supposed to be a system that just feels fun. It's supposed to be something that feels rewarding when it does work, not something that feels punishing when it doesn't, and right now, I feel like there's a lot more punishment that people are feeling from tempering than actual enjoyment. And I think that having a limit to the reroll system is more than a reasonable concept in itself, but I do think there needs to be some sort of way to circumvent it as well. The main thing that I have lobbied for since I first encountered this mechanic would be a special specific boss on the level of something like the Echo of Lilith, of Torment Duriel, or Torment and Dariel, who does not drop any actual loot of their own, doesn't have their own loot table, but whose only purpose is each time that you kill them, they will let you fully cleanse and reset the temper rerolls on a single piece of equipment, a sort of skill-based challenge of a difficult boss to not completely remove the RNG factor of tempering by any means, but to remove the concept concept of bricking for players who are strong enough to overcome this challenge on repeat. Or just, to make it even more fun, you could even have it be that it only resets the rerolls of equipped items, but it does all equipped items. So if you want to reset an item with bad rolls on it, you have to be able to kill this boss while using the item anyways. And if you want to do multiple at a time, you can, as long as you're, again, still strong enough to do it in the first place. I mean, that is what I personally would consider to be earning it as far as powerful items go in Diablo 4. An alternative to this that I have seen mentioned as well, especially with the amount of resplendent sparks that we are getting as players now on a seasonal basis, is the idea of literally just the cost of one resplendent spark to wipe the slate clean on an item and reset the temper rerolls on said piece of equipment. I think that's probably too high of a cost, honestly. Most players won't see many resplendent sparks per season, even with guaranteed ones now, so at that rate it would probably only really be used on like 2 or 3 items a season per player, and even then it's still limiting enough that I could totally see someone doing a full reroll with this, still not getting these stats that they wanted through tempering, and just being incredibly sad and salty, but now with also having one less resplendent spark as well, which just makes it even worse. Past that, a couple more ideas that I've seen for potential fixes that I think are definitely interesting is adding tempering rolls to an item based on how many greater affix that it has. So let's say an item with 1 greater affix gets 2 extra rerolls, 3 greater affixes gets 6 extra rerolls. So basically you'd have double the normal number as a sort of fail-safe that the rarer an item is when it drops, the harder it is to brick through tempering and the higher a chance you have of getting better rolls with it. This one I do like quite a bit conceptually. I think it balances the system nicely, but then it does also feel like tempering and greater affixes are pretty much completely tied to each other, right? Where better greater affix gear will just wind up with better tempering affixes as a result of this. Then finally, quite simply, the inability to roll the same affix twice in a row. This would not be a full fix by any means, but could easily be made part of the general changes to the system to help it as a whole. I mean, how often are you doing something like, let's say, hunting for damage against close enemies, and you just keep hitting damage to distant enemies, damage to distant enemies, damage to distant enemies over and over and over again? This would have an even greater effect as well on manuals with only like 3 affixes on them, but this would help make it feel like the game was at least a little bit more generous in just offering different options while tempering, which would help quite a bit in at least the general interpretations and the understanding of the system. And that pretty much covers the various ways that I've seen of changing the system that I am at least somewhat a fan of personally, but what do we think the chances are of any of these things actually happening? Well, as I said at the beginning, the lack of any actual notes about tempering at all in the mid-season patch either means, quite simply, that tempering is staying as it is for the near future, or that we are likely to see some changes in regards to tempering in the PTR coming soon for Season 5. I'd say it's far more likely to be the second one of those, as even if there has been missteps here or there this season, the developers do seem quite aware of what players are unhappy about at any given moment right now. So realistically, I just wanted to say all this stuff so that we could simply get all of our ideas out right now on how to possibly improve tempering before this PTR stream happens. Hopefully Blizzard will hear some of the more interesting ideas and either make us all happy by including them, or even maybe just make us even more confused about how it still won't be addressed, possibly. I hope you've all enjoyed this then. Let me know your own thoughts on all of this in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.